The world of Selen was hard on the small and the lonely. In the shadows of its crystal towers, an alien child named Rin watched the world go by with wide, hopeful eyes. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dusk, pale lavender flecked with silver, and her thin fingers traced the pattern of a family. She'd never known on the misty glass of the orphanage window, Rin wasn't like the others. The caretakers called her Quiet One because she rarely spoke, and the other children whispered that she was unlucky. But what they never saw was her secret, a tattered picture, hand-drawn, of a family, a mother, a father, and Rin herself, all smiling beneath Selen's twin moons. Every night, as the stars blinked on, Rin pressed her picture to her chest and whispered her wish into the darkness. I just want a dad, someone to keep me safe, someone to stay. No one answered. Not until the day a stranger arrived. His name was Mark. He was human tall. With weary eyes and a crooked smile, an off-world engineer working on Selen's broken energy grid. Most of the townspeople avoided him, muttering about outsider trouble. But Mark didn't seem to care. He brought laughter to the dusty orphanage, fixing broken lights, telling stories about blue skies and summer on Earth. And most of all, he noticed Rin. One afternoon, as rain pattered against the crystal windows, Mark found Rin sitting alone in the reading nook, her head bowed over her faded drawing. "That's a nice family you drew," he said, gentle as dusk. "Is that your dad?" Rin hesitated, then nodded. Her voice was a whisper. "I never had one. But I think, maybe if I hope hard enough, someone will come." Mark sat beside her, silent for a moment. He knew that kind of hope. Dangerous. Beautiful, and easily broken. "You know, I never knew my dad either. But sometimes family finds us in ways we don't expect." Rin looked up, searching his face for any hint of promise. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Mark smiled, warmth flickering in his tired eyes. "If you want me to, I will." From that day on, Mark returned every evening. He read to Rin, helped her with puzzles, and made her laugh until she forgot how to be afraid. For the first time in her life, someone kept their promise to come back. But not everyone in Selen welcomed Mark's kindness. The orphanage director watched with suspicion, warning him not to give the girl ideas. Some townsfolk whispered that it was wrong for a human to care so much for an orphaned alien child. Mark didn't listen. He saw the way Rin's eyes lit up each time he arrived, the way she clung to his stories, the way she dared to hope. And slowly, quietly, he made a promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to give Rin the family she'd wished for, no matter the cost. What neither of them knew was just how much that promise would demand. Mark kept his promise. Every day, rain or shine, after his shift in the humming, dangerous tunnels of Selen's grid, he brought battered books from Earth and stories about things Rin had never seen: oceans, mountain trails, a sky the color of honey at sunset. At first, she sat beside him, stiff and silent, too afraid to hope. But soon, she leaned against his side and laughed at his awkward alien accent, her shyness melting into something bright and alive. Each night, after lights out, the other children whispered in their beds about the human who visited just for Rin. Some were jealous, others wary. One older boy told her, "Don't trust him. No one stays." Rin tried to believe otherwise. Every day she clutched her picture of a family with trembling hands and counted the minutes until Mark returned. The orphanage director grew sharper, watching Mark with eyes full of suspicion. One afternoon, she cornered him as he fixed a broken heater in the main hall. "You're making trouble, Mr. Turner. The girl's not yours." "Don't give her false hope." Mark stood his ground. "She's a child. She deserves hope. And so do you." The director scowled. "She needs stability, not fairy tales. No human has ever adopted a Seleni child. The council would never allow it." Mark's face hardened, but he kept his tone calm. Then maybe it's time things changed. That evening, Mark found Rin outside beneath the twin moons, shivering. In her thin coat, she looked up, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Are you leaving?" He knelt, taking her small, silvery hand in his. "No, Rin, I'm not leaving. Not ever. if you want me here." Her eyes filled with tears of relief, of fear, of hope, so fragile it seemed to tremble in the air between them. "If you were my dad, would you still come, even if everyone said not to?" Mark's own eyes grew misty. "I would, Rin. I'd fight for you, no matter what it took." He didn't know yet what that fight would mean. But as he hugged her close and promised again to stay, Mark felt the weight of the world settling on his shoulders and realized he'd carry it all, just to give Rin a father's love. That night, the orphanage director filed a complaint with the town council. Rumors spread through Selen. The human was crossing lines, making trouble, risking everything for an alien child. For Rin, none of that mattered. She finally slept without clutching her picture, trusting for the first time in her life that maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to wish alone anymore. By the end of the week. The whole town of Selen seemed to know about Mark and Rin. Whispers echoed through market stalls and maintenance bays. Human workers eyed Mark with suspicion. Alien shopkeepers grew cold. The orphanage director, her lips pressed tight, watched every visit with a hawk's attention. It wasn't long before Mark was summoned before the town council. The chamber was cold and echoing, lined with both human and Seleni elders. Rin, forbidden from attending, pressed her hand to the window, watching Mark walk away. A stern counselor addressed him first. "Mr. Turner, you're a guest on Selen. We respect your charity, but what you're proposing is unprecedented." Mark sat up straighter, voice steady despite the knot in his chest. "I don't see Rin as charity. She's a child who deserves a family. If the law says humans can't adopt Selene children, maybe the law needs to change." An older Selene elder frowned. "Our histories are full of heartbreak when worlds mix this way. Rin is vulnerable. Are you prepared for what that means?" Mark didn't hesitate. "She already calls me dad when no one is listening. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. A younger human official whispered, "You know, this could cost you your job, your right to stay, even your safety." Mark looked down at his hands, calloused, cracked from years of hard work. He thought of lonely nights on other worlds, of the first time Rin slipped her hand in his, of the hope in her eyes. "I know," he said softly. "I'm willing." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the crystal panes. Inside, the council deliberated for what felt like hours. When Mark emerged, pale but unbowed, he found Rin waiting in the garden. The forbidden picture clutched to her chest. She ran to him and he scooped her up, not caring who saw. "Did they say you could stay?" She whispered, her voice trembling. "Not yet," Mark admitted, "but I'm not giving up. Not ever." Rin squeezed him tightly as if afraid he might vanish. "I don't need a perfect dad. I just need you." That night, a notice was pinned to the orphanage gate. "Council review pending. Further contact between Mr. Turner and Rin is restricted." Mark read it with a sinking heart. But when he looked up, he saw Rin's face at the window, hope flickering like a star through the glass. He pressed his hand to his heart, promising silently that no matter what the world said, he would never let her be alone again. The next days were the longest of Rin's life. The orphanage staff, following the council's orders, kept her indoors, away from windows and visitors. She stared at the ceiling each night, clutching her faded picture, afraid that if she blinked, Mark's promise would vanish like a dream. For Mark, the waiting was torture. He paced the streets, haunted by every memory of Rin's laughter, her trembling hope, her small hand in his. He called on old favors, met with counselors in quiet back rooms, pleaded with anyone who would listen. Each door closed in his face. Each day growing colder as the rumors swelled outside her troublemaker, dangerous dreamer. He wrote letters for Rin, smuggled in by a kind janitor. Each one held simple promises. "I'm still here. You're not alone." "No law can stop me loving you." Rin's replies, written in wobbly script, were full of questions and hope. "Will you come back for me? Do you still want to be my dad?" "I'll wait. I'll wait forever at night." Mark stood outside the orphanage wall, whispering stories into the darkness. Sometimes Rin would press her face to the high window, catching a glimpse of his shadow below, and hope would flicker in her heart. The council's decision dragged on. Some in town began to take sides, some secretly cheered for Mark's stubbornness. Others muttered that he was risking too much for a dream. The orphanage director lobbied against him, warning of scandal, tradition, and the danger of breaking old rules. Finally, word spread. The council would meet one last time, and Mark would have a final chance to speak. The morning of the hearing, Mark walked to the chamber with his head high, even as people turned away in the streets. Inside, he faced the council, voice raw but steady. Rin deserves a family. I love her. I'm willing to give up everything, my job, my home, my place, here if it means she won't have to grow up alone. A silence fell. The Selen elder, old and stern, met his gaze. Would you even give up your world for her? Mark nodded. I already have. The moment the choice hung in the balance not just for Mark and Rin, but for everyone who ever wished love could change the world. As the council deliberated, Mark stood in the square, heart pounding, willing himself not to break. Then the orphanage door creaked open. Rin ran into the sunlight, breathless, hope shining in her eyes. Did they say yes? She called her. Voice trembling, Mark dropped to his knees, arms open wide. I don't know yet, but I'm here. I'll always be here. She flung herself into his arms, holding on as if she'd never let go. The world watched, waiting for an answer. And Rin. The answer was already clear. The city of Selen seemed to hold its breath as the council assembled for their final verdict. Mark waited outside, Rin's small hand gripping his. She was shaking, but her eyes stayed bright, as if all her hope was in that one fragile grip. Inside the chamber, the council weighed centuries of tradition against the simple, stubborn bond between a human and a lonely child. For every voice warning of danger, there was another. Quieter voice, one remembering a time they too had been lost and wished for someone to fight for them. When the council doors finally opened, the orphanage director stepped out, face unreadable. Mark and Rin stood together, refusing to be parted. The Selen elder approached, his eyes solemn but soft. He spoke first to Rin. You wished for a father? Rin nodded, her voice a whisper. Yes, I just want someone to stay. The elder knelt so their eyes met. And to you, Mark Turner? You risked your place, your safety, even your own heart for her. Do you still choose this? Mark didn't hesitate. Every day, for as long as she'll have me. A hush fell. Then the elder stood and gave a slow, formal nod. By council decreed, in the spirit of new beginnings, Mark Turner. You are permitted to foster and adopt Rin, should you both wish it. The orphanage director stammered a protest, but the decision was final. Mark scooped Rin into his arms, tears streaming down both their faces as the square erupted in applause and wonder. Some cheered. Others wiped their eyes, hearts changed by what they'd witnessed. The world outside would still talk. There would be challenges, whispers, rules rewritten and tested. But in that moment, Rin finally had her answer. She clung to Mark, beaming through tears. Does this mean you're really my dad now? She asked, breathless. Mark nodded, voice thick. If you'll have me, Rin, forever. She hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. Forever, she promised. That night, Mark carried Rin home, real home, for the first time in either of their lives. He tucked her in, her faded picture now framed on the nightstand. As she drifted to sleep, Mark watched over her, realizing that in risking everything, he'd found more than he ever dreamed possible. The orphanage was a little quieter, the city a little kinder. And beneath the twin moons, in a world that had once seemed so cold, a new family began. The first days as a real family felt like living inside a dream, fragile, dazzling, almost impossible to trust. Mark worked hard to make their tiny home warm and welcoming, hanging Rin's drawings on the walls, teaching her how to cook pancakes with too much syrup, and telling stories of Earth's forests and wild rivers until she fell asleep with a smile. Rin followed him everywhere. Her laughter echoing through the apartment, her hand always reaching for his. Each morning she woke him with a shy, delighted "Good morning, Dad," testing the word, letting it settle into her heart. Not everyone celebrated their new life. Some neighbors kept their distance, eyes wary or cold. Children at school sometimes teased Rin, whispering that she wasn't really Selene anymore, that a human could never truly be her father. She came home in tears more than once, clutching her old picture. Mark held her close, brushing her silvery hair from her face. "Listen to me, kiddo. People are always scared of what they don't understand. But I promise, you're as much my daughter as anyone could ever be." Rin sniffled, managing a small smile. "And you're my dad. For real." Slowly, the city's mood began to shift. Some parents started greeting Mark in the mornings, shy but sincere. One night, a basket of sweetbread appeared at their door with a note for the brave little girl and the father who never gave up. Word spread of their story not as a scandal, but as a kind of hope. Rin thrived in the warmth of Mark's love. She brought friends home for dinner, introduced Mark to her teachers, even stood up for another orphan in class who didn't quite fit in. The two of them built new rituals, midnight stargazing, pancakes on Saturdays, promises whispered in the dark that they would always face things together. Sometimes, Mark worried that he wouldn't be enough, that he couldn't fill the spaces left by all those empty years. But every time Rin reached for his hand, every time she laughed and called him Dad, he knew that what they had was real. One night, as they watched Selen's twin moons rise, Rin turned to him, eyes full of gratitude. "I'm glad you risked everything. I would have waited forever, but I'm happy I don't have to." Mark hugged her close, feeling tears prick his eyes. "I'm the lucky one, kiddo. You saved me too." And as the world outside kept turning, their home, once just a place to survive, became the center of a new beginning for them both. Months passed. Seasons changed. Mark and Rin's days filled with routines and laughter of father and daughter, inventing their own world. The apartment bloomed with color and warmth, flowers from the market, more of Rin's drawings, small gifts from neighbors who, little by little, let go of their doubts. The city of Selen remembered. The council's decree, once controversial, became a story parents told their children at night, not about scandal, but about hope. Once there was a girl who just wanted a dad, they'd begin, and a man who risked everything to be her family. Rin, once the quiet one, became a leader in her class. She stood up for outcasts, helped new children feel at home, and invited her friends to share in the midnight stargazing she'd once done alone. The scars from the old whispers faded, replaced by a pride that shone in her silvery skin and bright eyes. Mark, too, found something he'd never known before, a place in a world that once felt closed. He fixed things for neighbors, taught Selene children about Earth's silly customs, found himself laughing, even on the hardest days. Some wounds never disappeared completely. There were still times when a glance or a word would remind them, both of how hard won their family was. But Mark and Rin faced it together, always together. Their promise held, unbroken, "I'm not going anywhere." One evening, at a festival beneath the twin moons, the council elder who had once questioned them approached. He smiled at Rin, then at Mark. "You gave us all something to believe in," he said quietly. "You reminded us that family is not about law or blood. It's about love and the courage to choose each other." Rin looked up at Mark, her heart full. "I'm glad I wished for a dad," she whispered. Mark squeezed her hand. "Glad I was brave enough to answer." Under the glittering sky, the city danced, and for the first time, Mark and Rin felt not just accepted, but celebrated. Their love had changed not just their own lives, the very shape of hope on Selen. In the end, a little girl's wish and a human's courage did more than build a family. They opened a door for everyone in Selen and beyond who had ever longed for someone to stay. The end.